Welcome to Intersections, where faith, ideas, and life meet. Today we're talking about community and what it means to go from one community to another. And quite honestly, Lee, I have to say that I don't know a lot about that because I was born in America and I still live in America. But for 1 year, I lived outside America in England. And I remember just kind of thinking about what it was like to be an American in another country for a year.
What was it like?
It was wonderful. I loved it. But the thing that really sticks in my mind is the day I was flying back and I saw the American flag flying at the airport, and I thought, you know, through and through, my culture is a core of me. But when I go into another culture, then I feel like a part of that culture is something that I adopt. But you weren't born in America, so talk to us about that.
Well, for me, my blood runs when I hear the Australian national anthem.
Yes.
And I see the Australian flag, the
Yes.
Southern Cross. There's nothing better on a flag than the Southern Cross. And depending where you're born, that's how you see your identity. When you're born in a different country, you bond to that. I couldn't understand. I remember I had an American friend in Australia visiting one time at a college down there. And I couldn't believe he wanted to go back to America. It's perfect down here. Why would you want to go back? And so it's perceptions. But moving communities can be challenging.
Very challenging.
So for you, when you came back from England and you're on the plane, and you saw the American flag, did you fly American Airlines or American Airline or?
You know, I don't remember that. I just remember that I was sad to leave, but also happy. And there was that mixed feeling of leaving England that had become for that year my home. And then going back to my country, yet I wasn't the same person. So it was a strange mixture of being different and the same, and all at the same time. It was weird.
It's interesting. Our guests today have experienced community changing. Dr. George Desmarais, you were from Zimbabwe, and you were embedded in Zimbabwean culture, and you brought both your children. We have here Edward and. You're going to have to help me.
That's
okay.
Over here.
Edward and
Tafadzwa.
I was hoping you'd say that for me. Okay, beautiful name. But you brought your family along with your wife over here. How has it been for you? In fact, why did you come?
Well, let me first share with you what Zimbabwe is all like. If you want to know where Zimbabwe is located, it's right down on the south, the deep south of Africa. On the north side of South Africa, which is a well-known country, I think, throughout the world. Zimbabwe is a population of 12 million people. It is multicultural. Basically, there are more blacks than white people, and mainly we have white British people who are farmers. They've been farmers throughout all the generations, probably 3 or 4 generations, since 1890, when they came to rule Zimbabwe. By then it was Rhodesia. Now I'm born from what they call the Shona culture, which is the majority of the black tribe which is there. Now the culture of the Shona people, basically they are very communitarian. In other words, you exist because all others exist. Without them, you don't exist. And this is where I'm coming from.
That's very different to here. And what is the difference for you?
Well, the first thing that happened when I arrived right at the airport in Los Angeles, and I looked around, there were 5 black people, and the rest of the airport were white people, and I knew we were in trouble once more again, because back home, you make assumptions that we are the majority, and I don't have to look at who is a minority. But there we were in Los Angeles airport, and we were the minority. And just that, it hit me. And I began to process what it was like to be a minority among the majority.
Now, can you remember the day you decided that you were going to leave Zimbabwe? Did it just occur to you that it was time to leave? Was there a call from the Lord, or how? What was it that caused you to want to leave your country, your culture, all of that?
Well, I'll say this, we were well-to-do economically. I was a business person and I was a conference treasurer. I didn't live for any other reason when I left Zimbabwe, but education was a calling for me. I needed to get my highest degree.
George, you already had 2 masters. Why do you need more?
Well, that's an interesting question. Well, I needed a PhD so that I could uplift my community.
See, some people do a PhD. I have a PhD, you can call me doctor now.
Right.
For you, that's not the reason behind it. Tell us about that.
Well, I think at one point in time or in life, we need letters possibly behind our names. But I think having letters for the sake of letters behind your name really is what is causing all problems we have in the world. I think when you get letters behind your name, those letters must benefit the community that you live in.
So is it then your goal, or was it your goal, to go back to your own community in Zimbabwe?
Definitely, and I can share this with you. I had been running projects for the poor, and I was uplifting the lives of HIV-infected women who were widows, their husbands had died. I worked with young people, lifting up their standards of living by giving them money to run small income-generating projects.
Now let's back up and talk to us about, in fact, one of your sons wrote an essay. I think it was you, Edward. You wrote an essay about your father. Talk to us about the essay.
Basically, I was applying to Oakwood College. That's after I graduated from high school. And my essay was about, it was inspired by my dad's work in Africa. My dad used to build dams where there was no water. There were places where there were no water in Zimbabwe, and he used to build dams. And he also used to provide money for women to start small projects to start generating income for themselves. And basically that inspired me because one day I was driving with my dad to one of the projects, and the women there were so happy. They had this joyness in them, but they couldn't express it, you know, with just the ordinary words. They couldn't express it. You could see in their faces that their lives have changed, you know. So that basically inspired me to be like him, and I wanted to be a business major at Oakwood College. I thought that would probably, you know, cater for me to become somebody who would be able to help.
So you wrote this essay wanting to be like your father.
Yeah.
Now I want to go back a little bit to the AIDS issue. You were working, you said, without pay?
Yeah, I felt, you know, there's something interesting that I saw taking place in the church. And I found out that pastors, whenever their church member had been diagnosed with AIDS, church members shunned visiting the member.
So the pastor would no longer visit the church member?
Visit for the first time, second time. It's a chronic disease.
Yeah.
Each time you go there, the person degenerates. And
so the pastors would abandon them?
Not really abandon, but they would forget about them.
Yeah.
And just don't visit them. And I said, then who then will visit them? Was my question. And I began visiting government hospitals. I'd spend one of my Fridays twice a month, 2 Fridays a month, visit them from 8 o'clock to 6 o'clock. And very interesting, and I remember one of the woman I visited, she was a bank manager. And she said to me, my church abandoned me, and you came to see me, and I was holding my Bible. And she said, baptize me. And I said, man, the doctors have told me we can't baptize you because you are very ill. She had pneumonia. And she just cried. And I took tears in my hands, her tears, and I baptized her with her tears. And that to me is memorable. I can't forget that scenario.
George, it's interesting that you're doing this, but why? Where did that come from? Is there something in your family that inspired you with that? I mean, people don't normally just do that. Where'd that come from?
Well, you know, I have my grandfather who in 1920 became a Seventh-day Adventist pastor in the 1920s. Then his son became a pastor in the 1960s, who is my father. He's retired now, he's about 74 years.
Okay, you guys don't have any choice here. You PK kids bring it all down the generations. But okay, so your grandfather is involved?
My grandfather made sure that his spiritual life would spill down to the community.
His spiritual life would spill down to the community. What does that mean?
Well, what that means is it's not just about preaching the word, it's doing the word.
So let's find out if it has spilled down to at least to your little community, which is family.
All right.
So Tafajwa, talk to us about whether the values of your father, your grandfather, have spilled down to you.
Yeah, they definitely have. I mean, okay, my dad is a man of principle. Basically, he doesn't just talk like, oh, you have to do this and do that, and then he doesn't do it himself. He basically just taught me to be more independent. And I've seen by the way he does his things, he likes helping people. As my brother said, he used to help people back home, like the women in rural areas, to start their own projects, own businesses. And for me personally, it's made me more independent and more helpful to other people. So it definitely has.
Okay, when you say independent, what does that mean?
Independent, it means, well, if I want something, I have to go get it. You know.
So Dad doesn't, you just going to go to Dad and say, Dad, I need $20? I mean...
Give me a cell phone.
Well, it used to be like that when I was still a little kid, when I didn't have, you know, the chance and the abilities to work. But now, I mean, if I need help, I can go and ask him, Dad, can you help me out? But then he also expects me, you know, to be more responsible.
So what do you do?
I think I should say more responsible.
What do you do?
I work at Domino's.
Now, you are what, a junior?
I'm going junior college, junior year now.
And you're hoping to get into medicine.
Yes.
That's your big long-term goal.
Yes, it is.
But here you are, you work Domino's, and George, George and I go back a few miles, and George was telling me how his kids would get 4 or 5 hours sleep a night. What's that about?
Well,
Edward, yeah, and you were telling us about...
Yeah. When I started college, I used to work from 5 p.m. to 2 in the morning. So I used to sleep about 2 or 3 hours.
At Domino's?
No, actually I used to work at Loma Linda.
Okay.
Yeah, I used to. We used to do projects like cleaning up the hospital. Yeah. And so I used to end up at 2 in the morning, and then I would sleep probably 2 or 3 hours, get up at 5, get ready to go by bus to school, and by 7:30 I used to be in my accounting class.
And you're doing this, you were doing this because?
I was doing this because I had a goal. I wanted to finish junior college first. And at that time, I was a business major, so I wanted to get over with my business degree and perhaps go ahead and do my master's degree.
So you can be financially stable?
Financially stable and
Any
independent. And 2, I'd written the essay about helping other people. I thought that, at first I thought I wanted to go back to Zimbabwe and probably work in a conference of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, but my plans changed and I went to medicine.
Okay.
I'm curious, we talked about, George, you coming over to America. What was it like for you, leaving all your friends, because you've been here 5 years now, so you were, what, 15, 16, 17? What was it like?
Well, leaving my friends was probably the hardest part for me.
Yeah.
Leaving my friends was, I was lonely. I came here and I had to work harder to get friends. Back home, it wasn't that I had to work harder, just that everybody was so friendly toward me, but when I come here, it's different. You have to...
What was it like? You go to high school, what kind of people did you connect with?
There were people with different characters, you know, crazy people, sane people, but it was all right for me.
Did anybody give you any warnings or cautions about how to relate in society here?
Well, kind of, yeah.
I think I did, because we have what, if you don't mind, I'll mention this. We watched a film every Saturday night. What do you call this film where the police...
Life on the Streets.
Yeah, Cops on the Streets. And I thought that was an interesting film on Fox 11 every Saturday night to warn my children what not to do and what to do and what were the common crimes. And I think that helped them as they relate to going to school, to know basically what crimes young people do and what values then would they pick or do not pick from there.
But you also encountered some attitudes toward Africans, African Americans. Talk to us about that.
Well, I remember one day I was in my English class, and there was this girl who asked me, she was African American, she asked me, why do you hate African Americans? And I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to ask her why, and she says, it's because you sold us into slavery. I was kind of shocked because nobody had ever come to me with that statement before. So I really didn't know how to address that situation. So I just said we didn't hate you guys. We were cousins. We don't hate you.
Oh, wow. So it was on the other side of the whole slave issue. Interesting. You mentioned coming to America so that you could go back and help.
Sure.
But I understand your sons are concerned about you going back. Talk to us about that concern and whether your plans have changed and why that might be.
You know, there's been a worldwide cry over Zimbabwe's political situation at the present moment. The political culture there right now militates against any social, economic, or political development. And as you know, in that setup or that context, where the political culture does not favor multicultural type of political systems, you tend to have very poor people, submissive people. When you bring the educated, they become the enemy of the community. So going back at the present moment will not serve any purpose with my education. I would rather do something here that benefits the community. In fact, I was sponsored by Loma Linda, and if Loma Linda community and the U.S. could benefit for a while before I go back, that would be beautiful for me. Yeah.
And you know that there are a lot of controversies about people from other countries coming into
Sure.
America.
Sure.
And you've talked about what America could give you as far as education and things
Sure.
like that. Talk to us about what you think you all give to America.
Well, first I would say America is what it is because of the diversity in cultures, the integration of different cultures. I'll mention one thing here. I think Africa is what it is, and we all know it's not as prosperous as we would want it to be. Why? I think when you are closed to different cultures, you have no basis for evaluating yourself and to know what you may be lacking and what you need to do. You come to the United States, you have different cultures that are integrated, and with that, you tend to improve yourselves. You can evaluate yourself against other cultures and say, am I doing it right? What's going on? And I think the U.S. can benefit from me as a native African based on the following. We have a hard-working ethic, number one. Number two, we bring the communitarian ethic, which the Americans have forgotten.
Say more about that. You bring the community ethics,
Yes.
which you don't see so much over here.
Yes.
What don't you see?
You know, I work in the hospice, and I worked for Loma Linda University Medical Center. And one of the greatest cry when I visited patients, my son is in Michigan, he has never been here. And I will ask them, that mind of an African, when are they coming to see you? No, they have a family, they're busy. But, and it really baffles me. The African, when the mother or father is in hospital, they would resign from work and be with the parents. Because the communitarian ethic says, if I am, it is because they are. When parents are doing well, then I'm okay.
Now, when you first came here, you had kind of a strange encounter with setting up your utilities.
Oh yeah, you know, that was an interesting culture shock. I had got my utilities information. I must connect to Verizon, I must connect gas, Edison, and I must connect to electricity. So, well, I picked the phone. See, in Africa, the setup is you pick the phone, or the receiver, as it were, and when you dial the number, a person in person must answer you.
Yes.
So this is what happened.
And in Zimbabwe, a person answers and you say,
Oh yeah, well, you say
Good morning, yeah,
and how are you doing?
How many cows do you have?
Yes, you start talking the social
Yes.
life
Yes,
before you
yes.
go into business.
Yes.
And here you are, pre-recorded, I didn't know, and this guy says, press 1 if you want connection to electricity, press 2 to cancel your account, press 0 if you want to speak to the operator. So now I'm now talking to this pre-record and I'm saying, hold it, I want to ask you something first. And this thing is going, wow, so quickly. Well, finally, a lady looked at me and she could see I was so puzzled and confused. And I let that recording go. And I watched at that receiver, and this lady said to me, what's your problem? I said, I want to talk to this guy. I want to ask them first what I need to do. But it looks it's just going on, it's not listening. And she said, I'll do it for you. And immediately what she did, went onto the receiver, pressed all those numbers, and I was connected to the utilities. And I'm saying, again, the culture of being impersonal
yes,
versus being
Yes.
personal
yes,
is what I could bring in reminding people we need to be personal to people. People are people. People are relational.
I feel really sad as you're talking because it's almost like we've gone from a community to being pressing numbers on a phone. So you signed up to your utilities without even talking to a person. So there's almost no community at all there.
Well, there's nothing. Who do you
Yes.
relate to?
Yes,
Machinery doesn't talk to you.
yes.
And I think that depresses people.
Yeah.
Because people
Oh, yeah.
need to hear somebody's voice in person as they talk,
Yeah.
doing business.
Where do your ideas come from? There's a theorist who's influenced you, I think, a lot.
Well, I have my grandfather who cared for the village, and my dad tells me he used to care for a lot of people in the village.
Well, and before your dad, talk to us about Max Weber. Because
Oh,
I
yeah.
think there was
Well, as I was doing my coursework at Loma Linda University, I came across a guy, I think he's late now, his works called The Protestant Ethic, and the name is Max Weber. He talks of hard working as one of the work ethic for Protestants, and he speaks of living a frugal life, take care of the funds, invest them, or place them in some business to generate more income. And as I read Max Weber, it dawned on to me, that's what the Seventh-day Adventist Church missionaries brought to Africa to my grandfather. And also brought to my dad, and it has come to me. It's just working hard, under the notion that God wants us to be right at the top, and we should not be at the tail.
So you're not at the top for power, you're at the top for what reason?
Well, I think for me, I want to be at the top
Yeah.
to empower my community.
Okay, so you're using your power not as a scarce commodity where nobody else can have it, but rather share it around.
Sure.
How does that work?
Or how did it work? And I was curious how it worked for your grandfather, because he was in a sense at the top,
Right.
meaning well off, and he had some very specific.
Yeah,
goals.
my grandfather would have poor people come to his home, and I'll give an illustration here. If you worked for $20 for a week, he would pay you over $80. And my grandfather used to give poor people cows so that they could breed their own cattle. And he did that for many years. And my dad took over from my father. He didn't do as well as my dad did, but as well as his dad did. But what he did, my father, he cared for orphans whose parents died from AIDS. And my sons lived with those young people in the village, just together, sleeping in the same place and eating from the same plate. And I also borrow from that.
And where is faith in all of that? Why is he? What I hear you saying is that he was caring for the poor and those who were struggling with disease, and gave them even more money than would be expected.
Right.
Why was he doing that? Did it have anything to do with faith, or was it just a value that he had? What?
I think the faith comes part in the belief of stewardship. We need to be stewards. Caring for yourself, maximize your resources utilization, and then let them spill over to the community.
You know, we only have a couple of minutes left, George, but you have a story about your grandmother.
Oh, yeah. You know, I cared for my grandmother, and she loved my daughter, really, my son, really. He was the first one my grandmother took care of, Edward. One time, she was in the fields, and my father by then was a pastor. And my grandmother said to my dad and me, you know, today I fed a hungry God. I fed God who was hungry. So my father was upset about that. And he said, what happened? How can you feed God? Then I heard my mother saying, religion, which does not perceive a human being as God, is no religion.
So religion which does not perceive man in God's image is no religion.
You know, that phrase, Lee, that what does it mean to feed God? George, that really is impacting me. Is what does it mean to feed God? Is to help the community.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's my primer.
Yeah.
For whatever I do.
So I think what you've told us today is community is really important. And as we wrap up here, I want to encourage our viewers, reach out to your family, stay connected. It's so important. Just be there for them, because if you're not there for them, how can they be there for you? We've been watching Where Faith Ideas and Life Meet Intersections. I'm Lee Aveling.